Flow Unleashed.
Do you know how to rise above your distracting thoughts and instead synchronize all aspects of your being on demand in order to be present? Welcome to Flow Unleashed. I'm Dr. Cameron Norsworthy, scientist and high-performance coach to multiple world champions. In this show, we unpack key insights on specific topics so that you are kept up to date with the latest science and practice of human performance. In this pod, we will be talking about the mind-body connection and how we can use this connection to help us feel better, and be better primed to find flow throughout the day. We know that when we are at the pinnacle of human performance, our normal, disparate and disconnected parts of self start communicating more effectively. Our corticomuscular coherence, meaning the connection between our brain and our muscles, improves, allowing messaging to flow between the brain and central and peripheral nervous systems. The differing parts of our nervous system itself become more harmonious. Even reward networks and cognitive networks within our brain become more coherent. In short, our mind and body syncs up and amps up. This mind-body connection is perhaps most noticeable in its absence, when we allow this connection to become or feel disconnected. For example, I'm sure you have probably felt the mind racing away as the body endeavors to sleep. Or perhaps you didn't notice a new cut on your body for a time because you were so lost in thought. Whether it is being unaware of how cold our hands are until we feel like we're close to frostbite, or being distracted by the brain when trying to physically play a musical instrument, this disconnection can have both short-term consequences of performance decrement and mild stress or irritation, but can also have long-term consequences, such as physical and mental health. Scientists have been studying the connection between the brain and non-brain body for decades. And thanks to the work of entities such as the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we know that when a person feels stress, the focus is usually on the sensations felt in the body, like sweaty palms, racing heart, and shallow breathing. Yet the reaction to stress in our bodies is separate from how we mentally experience the stress. And it turns out also the gap between the two has major implications for well-being. The triggered stress itself that we feel is not the issue. If we train ourselves to not feel fragmented and do not override or ignore either our mental or physical reality, the deep adversities of life and the day-to-day stress that might otherwise distract and derail us can actually turn into good stress, even helpful stress for our well-being. For example, researchers report that individuals whose subjective experience of stress align strongly with physiological changes in their body, i.e. have strong stress heart rate coherence, tend to have higher psychological and physical well-being. Meaning that when our mind and body are synced up, we are more aligned. We are more capable of dealing with stress. We are more capable of embracing the stress rather than adding friction against it. This capability allows us to deal with all of life's stresses better and generally feel better about life. This internal connection of mind and body is important not only for optimal living, but also because as we get older, we naturally start to lose this connectivity. In a study published in the journal Emotion, for example, Aiki Saito used EMG and electrodermal activity to measure our mental and physiological responses. Saito and colleagues found that the coherence between valence ratings, i.e. what many scientists classify as the key felt emotional measure, And behavioral responses, such as facial muscle response, arousal responses, and fingertip temperature, was weaker in older adults, whilst younger adult bodies reacted to strong emotional cues. Older adults' bodily responses were a lot less. This study, like many others, point to the importance of actively working on our mind-body connection. Use it or lose it. One person who has chosen not to lose it and is continuously using it is our guest today, Cara Bradley. Cara is a mind-body teacher, consultant, and author. She's been named one of the 12 most powerful women in the mindfulness movement by Mindful magazine. Cara has over 3 decades experience helping others to synchronize their mind and body, and she's here today to help you bridge yours. Welcome, Cara. How are you doing?
Great, Cameron. Thanks for having me on.
So, Cara, how did you get into this field?
I experienced my first optimal experiences as a young figure skater. Back then, I was a competitive skater. I wasn't very good, so you wouldn't have heard of who I was, but I was a regional skater, but I was really into it. And I would skate before school, sometimes early in the morning. Back then, as figure skaters, we needed to do something called figures, which is where figure skating came from. And we were given a patch of ice for ourselves and what was called a scribe. A scribe was a really big compass, and you would get on this pristine patch of ice and you would trace a figure 8 as a template. And for an hour, you would then either trace that template or you would step a foot ahead or behind and trace another template of figure 8. You were either going backwards or forwards on an outer edge or an inner edge. Sometimes you turn in between and you were judged on it. And it was actually a competition to see who could do the best figures. Well, most of my friends absolutely hated figures. In fact, they don't even have figures in figure skating competition anymore. I loved it. I loved the feeling of being on the ice early morning. I remember the sounds of the crackling of the ice as my blade hit the ice, and just that whole sense of quiet in my body and in my mind. Of course, I didn't have these words to put to that experience back then, but looking at it now, it certainly did. It molded who I am. And because after that, I became a runner, a track runner, and I ran mid-distance running. And again, it was sort of this time in your body and your breath in the environment that was really very soothing to me, yet also extremely exciting. So I've always been playing and practicing and studying in these physical, yet very mental disciplines of skating. Then it was running, and eventually ended up diving deep into yoga and meditation. And so that's my crooked path to where I am now.
So how do you help others bridge the mind-body connection?
I'm extraordinarily passionate about helping people drop into their own natural state of being. I wrote a whole book on that. Just how do we access what's already here, that natural state of aliveness, the natural state of enthusiasm, the natural state of curiosity and even peace and this sense of joy. And it's always waiting for us, I believe, just underneath the conditions and patterns of our mind and body. So when we can get out of our own way, whether that be on a run or by the beach or on a mountain, oftentimes we can find ourselves beyond our conditioned patterns. Then we experience those optimal states of flow. You can call it so many different things. And so my whole life, I've been teaching or coaching or training people in some capacity to experience themselves beyond what I call the busy mind. But more importantly, to trust that they can access these states in a work environment or with their family or by themselves, that we can actually train ourselves to find these states, that they are just a moment or two away from a busyness or overwhelm. And so I've had so much fun over the course of my career, which seems like it's gone on forever at this point. But I've had so much fun playing with different mediums and different strategies, different techniques and ancient practices, and using modern neuroscience. And it's just always evolving, like you said before, Karen. So I think this work is never ending for all of us.
Absolutely. It's a constant excitement every day to realign, recalibrate and resynchronize. And part of being human, I think, takes us out of that synchronicity. And there will be people listening going, I've heard about mind-body stuff for forever. And some people who live in their head, more in our heads and our minds and our thinking and our logic, and will be questioning the power or the value of prioritizing the body, and vice versa. More people that live in their body and more kinesthetic and more action related often have success there and may question, yes, I know mind-body balance makes sense, but I'm just so used to doing what I do. And just to really simplify in a nutshell so we can all get on the same page, how do you classify mind, body, and do you see any other intelligent centers in the body?
That's such a great question. That's a loaded question for sure. Yeah. And most of us we're just living like a brain on a stick, right? We walk through our days. We're stuck in our head with the to-do lists and the past experience and what do I need to do tomorrow? And I can't believe she said that. And why didn't so-and-so call me back? And then, of course, we have media and social media and news feeds. And it's just this constant noise that is moving through our head all the time. And so what happens is that we forget that there's this sensory being below the neck, so to speak. There's these fields, the seeing and the smelling and the hearing and the feeling and all of our senses that are constantly listening and recording and understanding, making sense of what's happening in our outer environment and our inner environment. So when we're stuck in our busy mind, we are not as in tune with what the rest of our body and senses are telling us and informing us. There was an amazing book I read a couple of years ago called The User Illusion. And I think it's Norlander. I am sorry. The name escapes me. But in The User Illusion, and it's a hefty book, but one of the messages that I got from it is very simple and clear. And that is that our conscious minds are really only processing anywhere from, some say 16 bits of information to 50 bits of information. And so you don't really need to know what a bit of information is. Just think about these numbers. So 16 to 50 bits of information we can consciously understand or be aware of in any moment. Well, the rest of our body, our eyes alone, are processing 10 million bits of information per second. And then there's the skin and the sense of taste and our hearing. And so there is so much that's happening moment to moment that we're not able to be aware of. But I think that when we are able to start to trust that our body is incredibly intelligent, and that we are sourcing this information and processing what's happening both in our body and around us and interpersonally, when we could start to trust that this information is being processed, yet we might not be conscious of it, then we stop perhaps living so much in our thinking mind, in just trying to figure life out. And that's when we're able to drop below the neck, so to speak, and to live in a way where we are tapping into our full intelligence. And I'm simplifying this for sure, But, the whole idea of synchronizing mind and body is really about trusting that our body speaks to us through the language of sensation and instinct and intuition. And our mind is speaking to us through thought. And then, of course, we have the whole emotional body. And so there's this huge painting that's being created in every moment of our lives. And when we can start to trust that the painting will inform us of what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say. Now we're talking about this synchronization of intelligences. And it's really the way we experience flow, this optimal experience where we feel like we are being informed in every moment through our body mind.
Absolutely. The mind being the mental processor and the body being the body's intelligence center that has loads of receptors that picks up a heck of a lot more information than our conscious lens, so to speak. And with that, we can make better decisions and we can react and process things faster and be more holistically congruent in our actions moving forwards. And, there's so many things in what you said I'd love to pick up on. And I guess the first one is that level of, you mentioned the word trust, and what is trust and how do we trust ourselves? And we're so, all human beings are the same in this way. And we're blessed with this amazing brain. We're blessed with this fantastic reflexive thinker, if you like, that, separates us from other animals. And one of the most incredible tools that we've been gifted as being born as a human being. But for most of us, that drives our 99.999% of our waking experiences, and forget that it's just a tool that's designed to think and be self-reflective and to analyze and to assess situations, but although society affirms it and scientists were taught through certain modes of education to foster it as much as possible over and above everything else, we forget that actually, our most fulfilling moments or our best performances come from this total output, if you like, from mind and body as one. Has anyone who's sort of been in the zone or in flow or reflect back and think about when they were totally engaged doing the best thing, their best performance that they ever had? It was a mind-body experience.
We often know that we are at our best when mind and body are working as one, but infrequently do people specifically focus on strengthening this connection. Yet our ability to cohere and synchronize our mind and body is a skill. For example, a study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology reported that elite athletes who practiced heart-focused breathing techniques experienced significant improvements in performance, including enhanced athletic ability, better mental focus, and reduced stress. Mind-body techniques have been used for centuries, not because they have targeted this coherence, but because the benefits of these practices are apparent and enjoyed time after time. In fact, when we take a look under the hood of many psychological techniques, emotional therapies, and spiritual healing practices, they mostly utilize the mind-body coherence to elicit healing and insight. Art therapy, nature-based counseling, hypnotherapy, laughter yoga, life coaching, walking meditation, music therapy, and many other relaxation and breathing techniques all assist individuals to slow down and synchronize mind and body. Whether it's preparing for an elite performance, childbirth, or relieving the day-to-day tension, many standard practices all indirectly use an improvement for mind and body connection.
What tips or what have you learned over the years that sort of helps people to make that jump of letting go of that conscious rhetoric that's normally used to having the grip of our experience?
That's a really sweet question, because I think we all instinctively know how to do that. So when I work with people, whether they're athletes or executives, one of the first things I always talk about is getting to know flow. And I just use flow in a broad sense. So as an optimal experience where we feel and perform our best. And there, as you know, there can be a macro flow moment, which a lot of people will think of flow as being these mega moments of skydiving or jumping off a cliff or flying down a mountain on the skis. But there are so many sweet micro flow moments throughout our day where these moments that enrapture us, where we're fully immersed in the moment at hand, where we feel like we could just float in this moment all day effortlessly. And so one of the things I think is really important for us all to recognize is firstly, that as children, we're so much more prone to just be in flow or be in this body-mind synchronization when we're swinging on a swing or whether we're playing with our dog. There are these moments that we think about when we think about our childhood where we could remember certain smells or certain scenes like it was yesterday. And it's because those moments are just so vividly burned into our senses. And so what I often encourage people to do is to think about moments right here, right now in your daily life as it is in this last month, let's say, when you felt most awake and alive, when you felt most alive, fully alive. And so oftentimes I'll start with asking people, what does it feel like to be fully alive? What does it feel like in your mind, in your body, in your heart, in your throat? What does that feel like? And it's amazing, Cameron, because the questions, no matter if I ask these, and I've asked these questions in senior living homes. I've had the privilege of working with seniors who come into the room with their walkers and talking to them about these optimal experiences and young children. And for most of us, it's universal, right? We feel happy, positive, confident, alive. We feel so energized and calm and peaceful and joyful and connected. I mean, I could go on, but we have some of the similar words. And then I'll ask the second question, which is what makes you feel that way? What makes you feel awake and fully alive? And inevitably, it's always amazing because 99% of the answers are activities or with people or doing things that don't cost any money, that are absolutely free and at our disposal. So it would be standing on a beach or being in the woods or playing with my grandchild or reading by myself, cooking, listening to music, making love. There are so many of these beautiful moments when we feel our most awake and alive. And so just having and helping people to uncover that a little bit, all of a sudden now something called an optimal experience doesn't seem so far-fetched. It doesn't seem out of reach. It's like, oh, wow, I'm feeling that maybe even daily. I'm having one of those moments of full aliveness. And I think that once we can become familiar with how we are moving in and out of these more optimal states throughout the day, once we get to know flow, then we can start to learn actually how to return to flow and how to train to live in flow more often on demand.
It's a really, really important point that, when you initially started saying, when do you feel most alive? I started to think, well, it's early today for my day. What's happened in my day today? And, immediately my mind went to playing with my 2-year-old son, and I felt completely alive and in the moment. And it was a magnificent 2 minutes that occurred before the practicalities of, right, we got to shower and get up and everything else kicked in. But ordinarily, those experiences would just move on, be forgotten and not associated with an optimal experience. And, often optimal experiences so often associated with world championship performances or life-changing events or experiences that we may only have 10 of them in our lifetime or one. But actually, it's those smaller, maybe milder, optimal experiences than life-changing events, but still those daily experiences that are really interesting to me, certainly, and can really radically change the quality of someone's life when we aim to encourage more of those in our life rather than those peak life-changing situations.
Yeah, that's just beautifully said. That 2 minutes rolling around on the ground with a 2-year-old can really light you up internally from a neurochemical standpoint, to just the pure joy can light you up and really be the thread throughout our lives. And this is where my deep passion lies, is I truly believe that we all deserve optimal experiences. It's our birthright to feel ecstatic joy, to feel deep peace and connection, to feel fully immersed in creativity or in a sport or in some type of dance. We all deserve that. But what happens, as with anything, with media and social media especially, and with sports and people that are doing things at very high levels, is it starts to separate us. And so the person living in the suburbs and tending to 3 children and working all day may think, sure, it's great for them to have these optimal experiences. They're in Maui, I'm out in the suburbs and I need to commute in the morning. Yet what I want to share is, no, we get to experience optimal states. We all do. It's our birthright. It's just that in many ways, we've been conditioned to not recognize them. Just like you said, it just even 2 minutes. When we can start to recognize, yes, this is one of those sweet moments. Like for me, oftentimes it's getting up early. I get up super early and I have my whatever book I'm reading or books I'm plowing through, and that first cup of coffee, and I'm by myself in my room, in my chair with my books. And it is just pure heaven for a half an hour until I need to get myself going. So when we can start to recognize that these moments are available to us, even packaged in ways that we would never even call optimal, now we can start to not only recognize that these moments are available, but we can start to plan for more optimal experiences throughout our day. For instance, I know I get up early so that I can have that half hour by myself. You may carve out the time at the end of the day so that you can sit down and read a book to your 2-year-old, knowing the joy and the peace, the connection it's going to bring you. And this is when we start to make our optimal state more of our default state and more of our default way of living. That's really why I feel like I do the work that I do, is to just help share that message.
Do you want to help others unleash their performance? Do you want an internationally recognized accreditation to stand out amongst the crowd? Or do you want the playbook I use every day when helping professionals to be their best? Join us at my training organization, the Flow Center. We are on a mission to train a fellowship of expert practitioners to work with us and help make the world a better place. And whether you want to join the Flow Center team as a flow coach, or continue your professional leadership development, or integrate these valuable skills into your organization and team, go to flowcenter.org today. So how do we decipher between all the noise in our minds? How do we lay down the thinking brain so that we can listen to our intuition, our instincts, or other intelligence centers that we may feel are more connected to the body?
First, I think most simply, I'll use the metaphor of the snow globe. I have this fantastic snow globe that I often travel with when I'm speaking. And throughout my talks or presentations, I'll hold the snow globe. And I'll explain it at first, why I'm holding the snow globe. And then after a while, I don't even need to explain it. I'll just shake it up and I'll hold my hand still as people watch the snow start to settle. And so, back to the busy mind, when we are stuck in our head and we are thinking all the time as the kind of the front line information, what should I do next? Then we often feel clouded. We do feel disconnected. We become that brain on a stick. And we forget that there's this sensory intelligence that's constantly streaming and informing us what to do, what not to do, where to put our foot, on a court, or how to place the ball, or whatever it is that we're doing in the moment. So when we're given the opportunity to allow the busy mind or the snow to settle, there's clarity. And with clarity now, we can actually tune into the rest of the information that's flowing through us. Remember, I said before that our other senses will process up to 11 million bits of information per second, where our cognitive mind, and these numbers are always changing. So, but you can tell it's a big difference.
There's a difference. Yeah.
Right. To what we can consciously think. But here's what's wonderful that I've learned through my study of meditation, specifically in the Tibetan Buddhist discipline. And that is that many meditators or meditation teachers, real masters, will consider thinking as our sixth sense. So we think, we smell, we see, we hear, we feel. And then you could even go a level deeper, right? Our interoceptive awareness, which really just means we're starting to tune into the deep, deep messages that are coming through our body. For instance, you walk into a room and you don't know anybody, and you can start feeling your heart pounding through your chest, where you start to feel your breath get shallow. Like, these are indications that you're on the defense, so to speak. You're moving into a more anxious or stressed mode. So these are all of the knobs and levers that are constantly being changed and lifted and lowered and heightened and downregulated and upregulated, based on what's happening in a moment. But if we're just stuck in our head and we're in that very cloudy snow globe, we can't sense into that. We can't recognize that very subtle moment when your throat tightens, thinking, oh, I'm getting a little nervous here. What do I need to do? So when we are able to inhabit and fully embody ourselves, so we're not saying don't think, because thinking, as I said before, is often considered a sense, a very important sense. It's incredibly informative as to what's happening in any moment. We don't want to discount the rest of the senses of our body. Now, just getting back to something else that you said about intuition and instinct, I had the pleasure, really honor, of interviewing Dr. Stephen Porges. And Stephen Porges is a researcher who was, I think it's safe to say, founded the polyvagal theory. And I won't get too far down that road, not because I don't want to, but I'm not as versed as a researcher to really explain it well. What I will say, though, is what Dr. Porges has described is something even below our ability to make sense of what's happening in a moment, is this, what he calls neuroception. And neuroception is really what you were talking about, our ancient ability, our ancient capacity to know if we're safe or not safe. And most of that knowing is happening subconsciously. So I'll just give you an example. If you think about dogs, times dogs, I mean, they will know instinctively if another dog is safe or dangerous, and they'll react. And now what Dr. Porges is telling us is that we do the same thing, that we can read each other like we read a book. We can, upon meeting someone new, I don't even know what the amount of time is, but it's a very fast amount of time. we will unconsciously or subconsciously sense what's happening in that other person based upon their breath rate, their heart rate, the tone of their voice, their body language. We can sense whether to move in or to move back. And so I think that when we're talking about intuition, from my experience and what I've studied, is that when we can trust that this whole body mind is informing us through sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious information, sensory information, little changes in temperature of the skin or heart rate, we become a more fluid being. We can now, when we trust this, we can now walk into the room and trust that we're going to know what to do, where to sit, who to speak to, how to speak to somebody, when to not speak, how to act. And this now we can put this into action in our creativity and how we work with others and how we serve others. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded. It's a load of information. But again, coming back to our birthright is our capacity to be able to move and think and speak from this whole body-mind experience, as opposed to just thought.
And I think some of the challenges we've talked about, certainly when we reach that mind-body holistic balance, interesting things start to happen, right? The intuition becomes louder, or the experiences become richer and so forth. And two things you've highlighted, one, it's our birthright to experience this frequently, but yet most of us are either too busy or some of us don't feel like we're allowed to. There's a sort of a guilt scenario of being able to let ourselves shine, so to speak. The famous quote from Marianne Williamson of, when we shine, we subconsciously give others the permission to do the same. And what's one really good short-term preparationary tip that you can kind of apply, and 30 seconds later, even if it's just focusing on breath and putting mind and body on the same place? And then also, what's sort of one, if we think about over the span of the next 10, 20 years, how can we think about the long term and sustainably put things in motion that mind and body are collectively moving further together rather than further apart?
Okay, well, I'll try to do this. Firstly, I think asking ourselves the question throughout the day, where am I right now? Or how am I right now? Right now, how can I be optimal? And that's going to change, whether it's morning or evening, whether you're at work or you're on a soccer field or you're with your kids. How am I right now? And how can I be optimal? Optimal meaning our best state for this moment, our best state for what's happening and where I am and what I'm about to do or how I'm about to be right now. We don't even have to necessarily answer the question. I believe that asking the question allows us to kind of tune in. It's like doing this very quick inventory. How am I right now? Okay, I'm a little shaky. Okay, breath. So we have the capacity to shift our state, and our breathing, and just our breathing pattern is one of the quickest and easiest ways to do that. So our breath gives us access to our nervous system and the state of our nervous system. So just by balancing breath can often help us to shift into a more coherent state of clarity and calm at the same time. So throughout the day, before a meeting, after a meeting, you could just ask, how am I, or what am I right now? And what do I need to be optimal? For sometimes you're going to need to be in silence for a minute or two. For some people, you may need to go do some jumping jacks to get your energy up. So it's going to shift. And that's why we call it flow, because moment to moment, it's going to be different. So waking up to this moment and recognizing that you do have the tools, we all have the tools to shift our state, even subtly, into a more optimal place to create, connect, and to compete even. Just simply checking in and tuning in with yourself all day long. So it's a practice of mindfulness, really. That's what it is, paying attention to your state moment to moment. So that's hopefully the first answer to your first question. And long-term, I think as we continue to learn about our intelligent systems and that it's not just in the head, that we do have this extraordinary sensory brain in our gut, that the vagus nerve is this highway of information that makes us just brighter, more intelligent beings. As we become more aware and as research continues to inform us of our brilliant capacities, I hope that emotional intelligence, physical intelligence, social intelligence, and even intelligence of our nervous system becomes more important in our everyday conversations and our schooling and our leadership training. So it's not just about how fast or how much we can produce, but actually how turned on and how alive can we be for each other in this world.
We feel most alive when our mind and body is connected, together, moving and operating as one. Why? As Cara points out, we have better access to our other senses. With this in mind, focusing on sensing our moment-to-moment experience, in other words, experiencing the moment through our bodily senses as opposed to our minds, can help us to come alive. A recent area of great interest and an extension of the mind-body connection has surrounded the idea of heart coherence, a physiological state, according to the HeartMath Institute, that can be described as a type of coherence that occurs when a body's system, our breathing, heart rhythms, brain rhythms, and hormonal responses are in sync with each other. In fact, numerous studies have shown that the heart coherence is an optimal psychological state associated with increased cognitive function, self-regulatory capacity, emotional stability, and resilience. Why? Because the heart and brain communicate through the autonomic nervous system, which controls most of our involuntary functions such as breathing, digestion, and heart rate. Importantly, the heart generates its own electrical field, which is 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity of the brain. Contrary to always seeing the mind as the intellectual kingpin of our internal systems, the heart's signals can influence the brain, and of course, vice versa. The heart beats in rhythmic patterns, and the changes in this patterning, specifically the fluctuations between each beat, is known as the heart rate variability, or HRV, as you might have heard. Specifically, HRV refers to the variation in time between successive heartbeats and is an indicator of the adaptability of the autonomic nervous system. This measure provides a window into the interplay between the heart and the brain and how in sync many of our internal systems really are. We know that focusing on this coherence helps our moment-to-moment experience, application, and levels of satisfaction within every given moment. To highlight one study, for example, published in the journal Emotion by the American Psychological Association, researchers found that people who are experienced in managing their bodily sensations displayed greater coherence. A study titled Coherence Between Emotional Experience and Physiology, Does Body Awareness Training Have an Impact?, studied 3 groups of people. First group was experienced Vipassana meditators who were experienced in their attention to visceral sensations, Then the next group experienced dancers who were experienced in their attention to somatic sensations, i.e. bodily sensations. And a third control group who had varied or no experience in these domains. Results indicated that the meditators had the highest coherence levels, dancers having intermediary levels, and the control group having the lowest levels, highlighting that specialized training that promotes greater body awareness can increase our ability to be coherent on demand. Specifically, focusing on our heart space and finding greater coherence just within the rhythm of our breath and heartbeat can go a long way to bridging the mind-body gap and how we respond, act, feel, and perform. It can be the difference to turning a disconnected being into a connected and more powerful being.
Time to flip the mic.
My question to you would be, what person, place, and activity, and you can give us several, makes you come alive? What are those places, people, or things that you do daily, weekly, monthly that make you come alive or feel most alive?
Yeah, wow. How long have we got?
That's great.
So many things, from my kids to I surf a lot. I hit the mat and do yoga most days. Just after I've come out of a meditation and I come back into the world around me, things feel lighter and brighter and I feel more attuned. And sometimes cooking. I love to cook and I can really come alive when I'm cooking. But it's been interesting because over the years, the activities have very much changed. So when I was younger, it was more tennis and games and then my kind of sporting activities have changed. Although not the most competent or talented musician, I love to listen to music and come alive with certain melodies, etc. And I guess what I'm becoming more and more attuned to is it's more about where I'm at rather than what I'm doing. And there's certainly activities that help me get there a lot faster. My challenges nowadays is to find it in whether I can't do activities because of injuries or I don't have time or have to prioritize the financial equation in my life, which takes me to do more work than play or so forth, or is finding it in areas that I ordinarily wouldn't, which I actually find really interesting and challenging and fun in its own right. And even more so sometimes than activities I'm used to coming alive in. And that's been a real fun journey in sort of more recent years to look at it from that perspective. But a sort of sporting background, so most sports certainly helped me tap into that kind of holistic, intuitive action more readily, for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it does change. It's always changing, which is what keeps us awake and alert to even the smallest things that may just bring us joy and challenge and excitement and enthusiasm. So to be on the hunt, always on the hunt for those optimal experiences.
Yeah, life is too short not to, for sure.
Absolutely.
Cara, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for joining us. And
thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Flow Unleashed.
If you would like to find out more about Cara Bradley and her amazing work, please see the show notes. Thank you for listening to Flow Unleashed. If you enjoyed listening, please subscribe to get notified when our next episode drops. The more people that subscribe, the better I can make the show for you. Equally, please leave a review. Your review will go a long way to helping others find this pod. Until the next time, thank you for listening to Flow Unleashed.